Hello, this video is going to be about take profit and about warning signals which could signal that there could be a trend change, which means that it's best for you to take your profit before the trend change occurs. So those warning signals are those for limit order absorption, aggressive orders, and delta divergence. Now, if you remember, I talked about those in previous videos where I was talking about trade confirmations, but in this case, those signals will work as a sort of warnings, which if they appear near support or resistance zone, then they tell you that you should immediately quit your trade, because what they basically do is they confirm the support level or the resistance level, and they signal that the price will turn. So imagine that you are, for example, in a short trade, and somewhere in this area there is a support. So you're in the short, the price is reaching the support area, and somewhere in here there is, for example, the limit order or the absorption, aggressive orders, or delta divergence, for example in here. And this tells you that the support will most likely work because it gets confirmed by one of those four. And in this case, they work as a warning because remember, you are short. So they warn you that the support is probably going to work and that you want to quit your trade immediately. So for example, if there was a limit order in here, then it would be the last warning for you to take your profit before the price reacts to the support and before the price turns. Alright, usually that's the last warning you'll get. Now, if you skip through those videos and if you are watching this first, then I suggest you first watch the videos which I go more in depth with those four, as I won't be describing those in this video. I'll just show you some trading examples, how you can use them as a warning. So let's first start with the warning signal number one, the limit order. So imagine you are in a long, and then suddenly somewhere around a resistance zone in this area, this appears. This huge limit order, huge selling limit order. That's the signal for you that you want to quit your trade immediately. So if you see this in a resistance zone, this is the place where you quit the long, this is the place where you take profit, and you do that immediately in here, right? Now, what I forgot to tell you is that I like to watch for those warning signals or 5-minute charts, and the sell content is obviously bid and ask for this one because you need to see what's on bid and what's on ask. All right, so 5-minute chart, in my experience, this is where you can nicely see those warnings. So that's why I look for them on the 5-minute chart. So let's have a look at another one. Imagine you are short, somewhere in here there is a support, and you are trailing your position, and suddenly you see this. This is a buying limit order, those 117 contracts. This is the last warning for you. So this is where you take your profit. As soon as you see this jump in, you quit your trade. All right? Because it was the warning signal that probably somebody big jump in with 117 contracts and that the price will most likely turn upwards. All right? Now, another example of the same thing. Imagine you are trading short position. This is a support somewhere in here, and suddenly this thing appears. Selling limit order, and then aggressive buyers start to jump in. This is most likely a big limit order waiting somewhere in here, those 215 contracts. Somebody big was waiting in here to enter a long. So when you see this, you immediately quit your position and take your profit. All right. Now, one last example on the warning signal number 1. Imagine you are long, you're trailing your long position, and you are trailing the long position until you see something spooky, all right? Something which warns you about going long. Imagine that there was a resistance zone, and in that resistance zone you see this, especially those 160 contracts on ask. This indicates that this is most likely a limit order, and because it's on ask, it's most likely a selling limit order. So in that place, most likely somebody big jumped in with selling limit order, and this is where you want to take your profit because the price will likely turn from this area. All right, that's the last warning, this limit order. Now the second warning signal is the absorption. Imagine you are short. Imagine this is a support somewhere in here. You're trading your position and you want to quit it somewhere in here, somewhere in this support. Now, imagine you are greedy. You want to get as much from the trade as possible. So you are still in the short, but then you see this huge number pop up on bid as well as on ask. That's a sign of absorption, which got formed within support zone. So this is the last warning, and when you see that, you immediately quit your trade. You take your profit there. All right, so that's the warning with absorption. Let's have a look at another example of this warning. Imagine you are in a long trade, and what you are waiting for is a warning that sellers are jumping in and that the price will most likely turn. And when you see such warning, you want to quit your trade and be done with the long. All right, so in this case, there is a sign of absorption, huge numbers on bid as well as on ask. Imagine that somewhere in here there was a resistance zone. So when something like this forms near a resistance zone, then you definitely want to quit your trade right there. So this would be the take profit. All right. Now this resistance zone could be, for example, a resistance zone created using volume profile or using the order flow. This could actually be the high volume area which you found using order flow, like I showed you in the previous video. All right. So warning created in a resistance zone is a no-brainer, and you quit your position right when you see it. All right. So let's have a look at another example. Imagine you are long. Imagine somewhere in this area there is a resistance zone, and as the price progresses upwards, you see this heavy volumes on bid as well as on ask. This is a sign of the absorption. The sellers are absorbing the buyers. The buyers run out of fuel, and there is a risk that the price will turn. So this is a confirmation of the resistance, and all this is telling you that it's time to quit your long. So take profit in here. Now, especially if you see aggressive selling after that, it's a no-brainer. You need to quit your position immediately. All right. Those are aggressive sellers jumping in right after the absorption occurred. All right. So it's no-brainer. You need to quit your trade in here. Now, last example of the absorption. Imagine you are in a short and you are trading your selling position. Now imagine there is a support somewhere in here, and within that support you see this pop up. A huge number on bid as well as on ask, and this is where you want to take your profit, because the buyers are absorbing the sellers and the price will most likely turn, and you don't want to be in a short when this happens. All right, so let's have a look at another warning signal. This one is aggressive orders. When you see aggressive orders jumping in against you, against your position, then you want to quit your trade. It is a no-brainer when this occurs in a support or resistance zone. When you see that, when you identify that, you should immediately quit your trade and take your profit and be out of the market. All right. So imagine in this case that you are in a short. Imagine that, for example, somewhere in here there was a support which you found, for example, using volume profile or the order flow. Now you see those huge numbers jumping in on the ask, and that's a sign that buyers started aggressive buying. You can also see imbalances jumping in, buying imbalances. So those are aggressive orders, in this case aggressive buying orders, aggressive buyers taking the initiative, and they are most likely trying to push the price upwards. So when you identify that, you want to take profit and be out of the short trade. All right, so let's have a look at another example. So in here, imagine that you are in a long position, you are trailing your long position, and you see that sellers start to jump in. Huge numbers on bid. Those are aggressive sellers. Also, you see this could be an absorption. So absorption, aggressive sellers, also aggressive sellers in here, in here, in here, also in here, big numbers on bid. That's aggressive sellers entering their selling positions with market orders. So when you see that, you definitely want to quit your trade and take your profit as soon as you identify those aggressive orders. All right, so that's where you quit your long. Another example of the aggressive orders coming in. Imagine that you are in a short and you are trailing the short until you see some sort of warning. In this case, aggressive buyers jumping in. Those aggressive buyers. Big numbers on the ask. And when you identify that, especially if it's in a support zone, in some heavy volume area zone, for example, then this is where you want to take your profit. This is where you want to quit your trade. All right, aggressive buyers jumping in, signaling that there could be a change in the price direction. Now, this is the last example of the warning signal number 3, the aggressive orders. Imagine you are in a long trade and suddenly you see aggressive sellers start to jump in, setting imbalances. Sellers are way stronger than buyers. This is a sign that you immediately want to quit your long trade because the sellers are dominating the market and they are likely to push the price downwards, especially if this happens in a resistance zone. All right, aggressive sellers jumping in. That's the last warning. Now you can also look on delta, on the cumulative delta, and look for divergences. So imagine you are in a short trade, but you notice that delta is rising. This means buyers entering their longs. Even though the price is heading downwards, the buyers are entering their longs, and this means that it's time to quit your trade. So that's the last warning which you'll get before the price turns and goes upwards. Now this warning is especially strong when you see that around support or resistance level. In this case, it would be around support. So when you identify that, when you identify divergence in delta and price around support and resistance zone, this is the warning that you should quit your trade. In this case, you would quit your short trade and you would take your profit in here before it's too late. All right. Similar scenario in here. Imagine that there is a support somewhere in this area. You are in a short, you are trailing your short position. The price reaches the support and you notice that delta started to rise even though the price is going downwards. So that's the divergence, that's the warning, and that's signal for you to take your profit and be out of your short trade. Now, last example, imagine you are in a long, you're trailing your long position, and imagine that there is a resistance zone somewhere in here, and you notice that as the price reaches the resistance zone, the delta is negative. There is a divergence between price and delta because the price is going upwards, delta is going downwards. So sellers are entering their selling positions even though the price is rising. That's the warning signal, especially when this happens around a resistance zone. So when you see that, you want to quit your long, you want to take your profit and be done with it. All right, so when you identify that near a resistance or a support, that's the end of the trade, because that's the last warning which you'll get before the price turns. All right, so that's for the 4 warnings. It's best to look for them around support or resistance zones. I'm not really into trading them on a standalone basis because you would most likely get a lot of false trading signals. But if you see those warnings around support and resistance zones, then you can be pretty sure that you are getting the last warning before the price turns. All right, so watch out for those, and I'll see you in the next video where I'll be talking about how to trail your take profit.